But come on, this Quran is a command, man. To study it, to read it, to recite it, to understand it. This Quran has everything we need. Just to read it and recite it is a blessing for us. To study this, it has everything. If you really go into the pages and you study this Quran verse by verse, and you go into the Sunnah to understand this Quran, listen, life is going to be so sweet. You don't need to quarrel, no dispute, no argument. But we don't study it. I mean, I know I should have been speaking on Dawah today, because this weekend we have the Jamaat here, the Tabligh Ijtima here starting from Asr Salah. So I want to let everybody and myself know, inshallah. But you will be hearing so many lectures on Dawah. Why should I repeat it now? Right? All weekend you will be hearing about Dawah and going the path of Allah and enjoying good and forbid evil. So I didn't want to speak on Dawah, I don't want to preach to the choir. The brothers in the audience here who came from all different places here today, you in Jamaat more than me, so how could I preach to you? You make dua for me, inshallah. So I didn't want to speak on dawah, going in the path of Allah. So I wanted to remind myself and you about the Quran. Anyhow, but it doesn't matter how much you in dawah also, huh? Don't forget, you only do dawah because the Quran says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah. Kuntum khayra ummatan ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar." Invite to the way of Allah with wisdom. And you are the best and most chosen people for linnas, to enjoy good and forbid evil. But you do that and we do that because it came from the Quran. The root is the Quran. So when you go in dawah, mashallah. When you go back home, mashallah, hold on to the Quran. Because life has interesting things. You remember the Sahabas, the example of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala and the Sahaba who were discussing, when we are with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are we munafiq? When we are with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we all right, Allah, subhanallah, mashallah, Allahu Akbar. And when we go home with our families, we playing with the wife, we playing with the children. And if you have more than one wife, you're playing with the wives. Brother Azad, you unfortunately is only one, so you can't only play with one wife. So you were like, oh, what's going on? Am I a hypocrite? We were the Rasul, so they went to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are we hypocrites that when we're with you, we are in this holy scenario, and we go back with the wife and children, we're in a different thing? What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? Hakadha wa hakadha. There's a time for this and there's a time for that. But you got to keep it all halal though. And what helps us to keep halal when we're home and we're in our business places and wherever we are? The Quran. Allahu Akbar. The Quran, you hold on to the Quran. But how do we hold on to the Quran? We got to study it. We got to ponder over the verses. And we don't understand it, you go and ask those who better understand it. But again, to conclude today's khutbah, brothers and sisters, Ramadan has come to an end. Okay? We read it, we listened to it. Come on, let's live it. And to better understand, to live it, we got to study it. We got to study it. And I want to quote another verse from Surah Kahf. Surah Kahf, again Surah Kahf, chapter 18 of the Quran. The very first verse, you hear our Hufaz read it every Friday. Most of them read it here before the khutbah. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? Now you'll understand why I mentioned about the differences and how the Quran is straight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins Surah Kahf, chapter 18 of the Quran, when He says, Alhamdulillahi alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. And then He goes on, وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ عِوَجًا. What is Allah telling us? That He is saying about praise be to Allah, who have revealed this Quran unto His servant. But then He continues to say, وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ عِوَجًا. And Allah makes it clear that therein in this Quran is no crookedness. This is straight. There is la rayba fi. In the beginning, the Quran begins with no doubt in this Quran, no crookedness in this Quran. This Quran is clear cut. So to conclude, for those of you who came late, any controversy you see in the Muslim Ummah, I don't care if it's moon or it's whatever it is, Any conflict. Even Sharia conflict. By different scholars in different countries. You go do some homework. Sharia conflicts, different countries, different scholars, different places. It's nothing to do with this Quran. Allahu Akbar. That's why you see everybody follow this Quran. You could be Shia, you could be Sunni, you could be Talafi, you could be Tablighi, you could be Wahhabi, you could be Hanafi, you could be Shafi, you could be Hanbali, you could be Maliki, you could be Nobi. We all follow this Quran, and that's why this will be one ummah. And that's the power of this Islam. Doesn't matter what Sharia you practice in Pakistan, and you practice in Africa, or you practice in Arabia, or you practice in Malaysia. When it comes down to the bottom line, we are all about the Quran. And that's what keeps this ummah together. And that's the problem other religions have. They don't hold on to their book. So they end up with the Talmud, and they end up with what the Pope says. And I don't mean to criticize no way, and I want to tell you again, being the former president of the Interfaith Council, run Interfaith, I do this lecture all the time with rabbis and priests, and I tell them that's why you guys have problems. You don't have the final cut, which is the Quran. You don't hold on to your Torah. You don't hold on to your Bible. If you hold on to that, you won't have a problem. But then you are saying this, and that rabbi is saying this, and the rabbi in America says something else, the rabbi in Israel says something else, and the Pope says something else, and this one says from 7 days something else. So you have these differences. But it doesn't matter what differences Muslims may have in the world. When we go to Hajj, we one people. When we go to pray, we one people. We could go to any mosque and every masjid. It's one Allah, one Quran. But you got to hold on to this Quran. All of us just follow it, but you got to understand this Quran, and it makes life even more enjoyable as a Muslim. You enjoy the blessings, the understanding. You know, when you understand something, it becomes so easier. The blessings, the barakah. So I want to urge you and myself, brothers and sisters, today. Last week we spoke on the fadail of reciting the Quran, because we all listen and recite in Ramadan. Today I wanted to remind myself and you, every one of us, doesn't matter who we are, and doesn't matter how much you memorize the Quran. All you Hufaz here, doesn't matter how much you memorize it. Doesn't matter how much we read the Quran. Doesn't matter how much we study the Quran. The more you revise the Quran, the more you research the verses of the Quran, is the more your minds are open up, your hearts are open up, and better understanding. Do you know again, every time there's a scientific invention, every time there's an issue in the world, and you go back into the Quran, you see a different version. That's the beauty of this Quran. Every time there's an issue that crops up in the world, a contemporary, modern world issue, and you go into the Quran, the answer is there. That's why in Surah Kahf, chapter 18, verse 54, Allah says, for every example, for everything that exists in this world that is beneficial for man and woman in this world and the hereafter, it's in the Quran. Maybe we don't understand it. That's what the problem is. It's not that it's not in the Quran. It's we don't understand it. We haven't got the understanding. We got to go into Sunnah and better understand it if we can. And that's what is so important. So time does not